Namaste, you're on the Nation at 5. I'm Anand Narasimhan, and we begin this edition live from the newsroom here at CNN News 18 with the story that is brewing in the northeast of our country. It looks like there is a clear intent to try and stir the pot, where even as the northeast of India was marching on the road to progress, with the development push of the current establishment under Prime Minister Narendra Modi bearing fruit, there just seems that there is a deliberate attempt to try and create a certain level of social and civic unrest and fuel insurgency, fuel terrorism once again in the northeast of our country, especially the 6 states around Assam. If you look at Sikkim, Arunachal, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, and Nagaland, all of these states, there seems to be a certain effort. More importantly, those states which have their border with Myanmar and with the military junta active there and in control, it looks like the PLA is clearly activating and enabling those who are being deliberately sent across to create problems, create trouble. Days after what happened with Colonel Tripathi and the 4 paratroopers, his family, 2-year-old Abir, all of them lost in that ambush, there has been a big crackdown. An MQ Chinese assault rifle has been caught in Arunachal Pradesh, has been recovered after some terrorists of the NSCN were negated or neutralized in this entire operation by the Assam Rifles. The Assam Rifles has very clearly said these organizations, the organizations that have claimed responsibility for the death of Colonel Vikrant Tripathi and his family and the 4 paratroopers, 4 para, is a different group which is based out of Manipur. They have different names. 2 groups have taken responsibility. The NSCN is active in Nagaland, but all of them are being enabled, trained over across in Myanmar, and these incidences are happening at the Myanmar border. This is a hero's salute and a fond farewell being bid in Raigad, his hometown, Colonel Tripathi's hometown. His father himself, grandfather himself, a freedom fighter. Kamalika Sengupta now joins us live at this point. We'll also try and bring in Shreya Dhondial here in the newsroom to tell us a little more. Kamalika, a hero's farewell being given, thousands turning up for Colonel Vikrant Tripathi in his final journey, with him in the final journey. But more importantly, what is happening in the northeast? We look at Tripura, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Arunachal. There seems to be a clear external hand, and it is happening. Trouble is being fomented deliberately because the northeast of India was moving in a particular direction, a positive direction, and the last 4-5 years had seen a huge dip in insurgency.
And as you rightly pointed out, last 4 to 5 years, if we see that there was no insurgency, rather, things were on the right track. But suddenly we can see that there are disturbances in the 7 sisters, and specifically everything is border oriented. And if we see that it's, if we take the chicken neck also, from the Bengal part, everywhere there is, this is a very sensitive area. And there is a sense of disturbance here. Specifically, we have seen the Manipur incident, how it took place. Last, we remember that 2015, there was an attack. And after that, there has been no such attack. So Manipur specifically that day, the incident which took place, that's really a concern area. And today also, right now, as I'm talking to you, the PLA has come up with a fresh statement saying that they are going to wage a war for the motherland, and they want freedom. Now this type of statements coming, and obviously they are coming and doing it from in the Indian land, and they're going back to Myanmar. This is a concern area, as what N. Biren Singh, the Chief Minister of Manipur, also pointed out yesterday, that the double fencing thing is really something which they are concentrating. Going to Tripura also, we see that there has been an unrest in Tripura also. There are political ramifications in Tripura, but there is a disturbance in Tripura too. Arunachal Pradesh, we see that today only the 2 people were picked up from Longding district. They were taken on the other side of Myanmar, and then they were gunned down by Assam Rifles. We have elections in Manipur next year. Manipur, the elections are very vital next year. So Arunachal, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, everywhere, including some parts of Assam too. This type of disturbances is really something new.
Right.
Government will not go down, and the
must
entire,
tell
all the 7 states chief minister, they have decided to go head on. That's what the messages that is coming from the
right.
administration. But really, it's a
Right.
situation, a
Right.
warlike situation in border
Well,
areas.
not a warlike situation, but deliberately trying to stir the pot and create a conflict and turn it into a conflict zone. Mind you, our viewers must remember that the first set of surgical strikes that were conducted in the northeast of our country, in Manipur and Arunachal, Nagaland, in those regions, into the Myanmar areas, and where the forays were made to try and negate these militants or these terrorists who are clearly now being trained by members of the PLA. Shreya Dhondial, our defense editor, is here at the news desk. So Shreya, a quick chat on this situation. Is there a deliberate attempt to try and shift the theatre of action, if you say, towards the northeast and try and stir the pot once again?
Absolutely, because look at what has happened in the last 2 years, 3 years. Have you ever heard headlines come out of the northeast where there have been ambushes or security forces have been targeted by insurgents? No. The fact is that things have been relatively quiet in the northeast as far as insurgency is concerned, so much so that the assessment of the army was that this was now the fit time to draw down troops, which means we were bringing down our troop levels. Is there a China hand? That is a question now everyone is talking about as we see heartbreaking visuals coming from Raigad and across the country of the 5 soldiers who have laid down their lives in the line of duty. Is there a China angle? It is something that everyone is now seriously talking about. By the way, it was first raised 10 years ago by Shiv Shankar Menon that these insurgents who largely now base themselves out of Myanmar simply because India is way too unsafe for them to operate from, they are with the Myanmar insurgent groups whose funding and whose arms are coming from China. Small example, small evidence that came in today, Anand. Today in the day, what happens is that there was an anti-insurgent operation that takes place in Arunachal Pradesh, where 3 militants are killed. Now, if you see the recoveries, there are 3 rifles that have been recovered. 2 are German-made rifles, AK-47. 1 rifle is an MQ, which is a Chinese-made rifle. What does that tell you? That gives you an indication that some amount of funding and some amount of arms to these insurgents are coming from China. And there is an attempt to shift the theatre. After all, for the last 18 months, there is a conflict between India and China at the LAC. So this is possibly China's way of keeping the pressure on. In fact, in 2020, if you remember that very famous tweet of Global Times, which is the official mouthpiece of the PLA, to say that, if you have that trade deal with Taiwan, then what is stopping us from funding the insurgents in the northeast? It was a direct warning.
It was a direct warning. No, not just that. Even earlier, when the surgical strikes were conducted and earlier regime of the, even during the junta and through Aung San Suu Kyi coming in, and after that with the junta, there were forays. The surgical strikes happened there. Even at that time, the defense experts believed that this training is being done imparted not by the junta. It is being done by the PLA. The arms and everything, the supplies are coming from the PLA.
Because as far as India is concerned, Myanmar is a friendly country. So friendly that you've already spoken about the surgical strikes where 70 Indian commandos stepped across the border in 40 minutes flat, had taken out 38 Naga insurgents, if I'm correct, and destroyed all their camps. So that has happened. In fact, the Myanmar army and the Indian army have also jointly, by the way, conducted operations in Myanmar against these insurgent camps. It is a friendly regime. Irrespective of who's in the seat of power, Myanmar is a friendly regime for us, which means we know the support for the northeastern insurgents are not coming from there. But these insurgents need to survive. What is their source of funding? Their source of funding is extortion in the northeast, rampant, drug trade, narcotics, but that isn't enough. That isn't enough because there has been a crackdown. Extortion pe crackdown hua, narcotics pe crackdown hua. In fact, 46 AR was one of the units that was involved in the crackdown of narcotics, not just in Manipur, but even previously in Mizoram where they were posted. So if there is a crackdown on these two things, paisa kahan se aa raha hai? Someone has to fund an insurgency. That funding, most security experts believe, is coming from China.
True. And was China saying that you allow the drug trade, fund yourself, and we will get you the arms and the training? Let's ask Kamalika quickly before I come back to you. Kamalika, what is now going to happen? N. Biren Singh, you're saying Manipur is going to go to polls next year. Security becomes an issue. There are thousands of crores of developmental projects which are being put there. Even in terms of improving social lives, Jal Jeevan Mission, even as far as looking at the campaign against AIDS, there is so much that is being pushed into that region across the northeast, across the states. Now, is that all going to get affected? Are there going to be countermeasures to further now make sure that the border patrol becomes stronger because the border is very porous there?
See, right now, the second thing which you pointed out, that the counter
Yeah.
role of the state governments, that is very important. And obviously, as we were also speaking to N. Viren Singh, the Manipur chief minister, he also stated that right now the focus is the border. If you remember, apart from the 7 states, 3 days back, here in Bengal, also the Union Home Secretary Ajay Bhalla, he also came and met the border officials and also the Chief Secretary, Home Secretary here. Fencing is an issue in entire Northeast. So, because this is the area from where, this insurgency, they get support. Obviously, Bangladesh is our friendly country. Myanmar is our friend country. But, in spite of that, this is something which is a major area of concern for all the chief ministers. So they are saying that, fencing is something which needs to be, the double fencing is required. And there are various places, in this entire border area where even fencing is not there. So that is why, that is first requirement which is needed, because next year the election is there, and also the total societal change has taken place. The entire, there is, from the mainland, also from Delhi, the entire focus is Northeast. The political party's focus is also Northeast. As far as BJP is concerned, BJP is focusing Northeast. As far as Trinamool Congress here is concerned, they are also focusing Northeast. So this is an important area. So all the chief ministers, NEDA will also sit down. That's what we are getting from sources on this issue, and they're really going to work it, and they are going to have an aggressive way. No bowing down to any insurgent group. That's what the theory of the administration is. That's what we are getting.
This is what we're just quickly. Shreya is also with us, and to our viewers. Now, this is a 2020 article on Asia Times, and I'm giving them credit because the fact is this is the map where the northeast of India meets Myanmar. And look at the states where the border is very, very porous. Manipur is a trouble area, Nagaland and Arunachal. So this is that belt. And a lot of times there are attacks which happen here. They get into the Myanmar border and then they use this along the lines and go across and then hide or come back into India. So is this something which we are seeing a repeat of now?
Absolutely. Anand, immediately after the attack takes place on Saturday, we now know the sequence of events of the attack. There are first 3 IEDs that are triggered so that the convoy stops. And as soon as it stops, there are 15 heavily armed men who start firing from both sides of the road. Where did these men go? Where did they melt away? They obviously melted away to where they had come from. Exactly here, because the area, because the area where the Saturday attack on 46 AR had taken place was very close to the Indo-Myanmar border, barely 4 kilometers. So how tough is it for 15 men, given what a porous border it is, heavily armed, to come inside Indian territory, conduct the operations that they need to, and quietly slip away? So when the Chief Minister of Manipur talked about a massive manhunt, etc., security forces on the ground were already telling us that there is a good chance that these 15 men, heavily armed men who had come into India, and this, by the way, was a very well-planned attack, had simply slipped out. Because if you need to orchestrate, an ambush of this sort, Anand, it takes months of planning.
Correct.
Almost 3 to 4 months of planning. The 2 insurgent groups that have taken responsibility for the attacks have said they took responsibility after 8 hours, which is very unusual, by the way, in the Northeast. Because in the Northeast, as soon as an ambush happens and Indian Army soldiers are killed, a group will come forward and claim responsibility because for them it is a win. It's a war of liberation that they are fighting. In this case, it took 8 hours. Why? Because there was a woman and a child who was killed. Never in the history of the insurgency in the Northeast have we seen women and children being targeted. Civilians don't get targeted, which is why
did they make an error there in terms of intel? We don't know, but I have to move on.
No one's buying it. No one's buying that argument.
Correct.
Because
so
it's way too
we can only say one
too.
thing: if it is so porous that they can come in and attack our soldiers, nothing stops our soldiers to get back in there and finish off what they had started sometime in 2014, 2015, and those series of attacks.
Retaliation will come.
It will come.
It will come.
And it's going to be comprehensive this time. Shreya Dondial, thank you very much for your inputs. Let's move on to the other aspect. Now, this is what is happening on ground, but there is something which is also happening in the digital world, ladies and gentlemen. The moment I say crypto or cryptocurrency, then there are a lot of bells that will go on, and there are a lot of perceptions that will be formed. There are a lot of our viewers who would perhaps now be actually investing or dabbling in cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is just one of the many cryptocurrencies which are available. What is this cryptocurrency? Why is there an issue with the government, and why are there alarm bells ringing? Is it a security issue? Is it a regulation issue? Or is it just that old tech versus new tech issue? More importantly, the government is now up to speed, and there is a parliamentary standing committee that is talking about it. The Prime Minister has spoken about it, saying that it cannot be unregulated. This path, it cannot become a security threat. It cannot become a platform for money laundering and illegal activities, because national security, and from a larger aspect of it, and it is also a multilateral issue. It is not just limited to India. It is boundaryless. So all of these aspects have been spoken about by the Prime Minister. The Parliamentary Standing Committee is talking about it. There is a new cryptocurrency law which is in the offing, and perhaps it could be tabled in the winter session of Parliament. But what is important to note, ladies and gentlemen, is that the government has not said that it is against cryptocurrency or any digital currency. The government has said that there has to be a certain level of regulation. So much so, the RBI is also one of the parties which is involved in the discussion, where there is an internal report of the RBI which is also due sometime through the course of this week. Shaktikanta Das, the RBI director, has very clearly expressed his reservations over an unregulated platform or platforms or currency, which have no reserve to back it, where there is no regulation, and you don't even know who is trading with who. You just all of them are numbers, especially in the case of Bitcoin. So all of this is causing a huge amount of concern. What is going to happen? Are all currencies which are unregulated going to go away? Are these platforms which are now enabling trade despite doing their KYC and getting the person's details in place, are they all going to have to fold? There are more than 8 million people in our country already who dabble in Bitcoin. The amount of trading which happens, the speculations are rife that it is huge sums which are involved, more than $200 to $300 million. I've got experts who will be joining us, but let's listen into what WazirX co-founder had to say.
For India, it's a large country, and bringing a new law is going to be always a complex process. The good thing is that we have finally started talking about regulation, and our finance minister spoke about the need for regulation. And we are seeing now different regulators wanting to understand this market. So I think India is now on the path to regulation, I would say. We've not regulated yet, but that's also true for many of the large economies where they're also still in the early stages. So even India has entered that path. And I think it's going to take some time. The need of the hour, I would say, is probably even before regulations come. It would be really good to get some guidelines so that the industry can progress in the right way and we keep bad actors away. But as an industry, all of us exchanges today, we follow certain guidelines, even in the absence of regulation. We have a self-regulatory body that has been built up. And I think this is how we get into regulation. It's not an overnight thing, but I think I'm glad that we've started that whole process of wanting to regulate crypto in India. So that's a win for, I think, the crypto ecosystem in general.
Well, Satwik Vishwanath, co-founder and CEO Unocoin, is with us. Good evening, Satwik. Dr. Nishakant Oja, advisor cybersecurity and counterterrorism, West Asia and Middle East, with us. Good to have you back after a while, Dr. Oja. But first, I'm going to go to our senior editor politics, Pallavi Ghosh. Pallavi, is the government against cryptocurrency altogether? Or is it just wanting to regulate and formulate guidelines so that it's not a free-for-all?
No, it's not at all against cryptocurrency. And in fact, there has been a change in the government stand. First, from talking about banning it completely many months back, it now understands the reality. And in fact, the Prime Minister himself has taken note of it. What the government is only worried about is a misuse, which is what the Prime Minister also indicated when he had a meeting. He said that, the young population particularly is very attracted to cryptocurrency, and therefore they are the ones who need to be protected. A misuse of cryptocurrency as far as acts of terror is concerned, national security concerns are there, and therefore the need is to regulate. So a mechanism on the lines of an RBI, which is there for real currency, is now going to be thought about as far as the cryptocurrency is concerned. Cabinet note is ready. The bill is going to be presented most probably in the winter session of Parliament. It's going to be regulatory, not restrictive. It acknowledges the reality of cryptocurrency, the times, the modern times.
Right.
Younger people wanting to invest in it. That really is the crux of the government's policy towards cryptocurrency.
Well, Pallavi, thank you for your inputs. But let me ask, Satwik, the cause of cryptocurrency or digital currency is not enabled, but some of the ads which have also been taken note of at the highest corridors, which say that very, cashing in on this rebellious attitude, but actually saying you don't need to do any work, just trade on our platforms and trade in crypto and make money. That's not true. Satwik, I can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself and go ahead, please?
Yeah, so I was just trying to say that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So in India, the average age of population itself is quite young, and on the other side, we also have the statistics that more than 70% of the investors who are investing in the crypto for the first time are actually looking to invest in crypto as their first investment itself in their life. So which essentially means they don't have any kind of investment experience. And on the other side, these kind of crypto ads, which are sometimes pushy and aggressive, just essentially trying to say that invest in these kinds of cryptocurrencies and it will become 10x or 100x is very much misleading. And I strongly believe whatever the stance that the government have taken about this to come up with some kind of rules is definitely a welcome thing. And on the other side, whatever disclaimers that the companies are putting, it's definitely not sufficient enough for someone to get refrained from or understanding what exactly the risks involved. So I think we are pretty much moving in the right direction, is what I think.
True, but there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of the regulation aspect and also the security aspect. Dr. Nishakant Ojha, one of the concerns is that this platform, because it's free and because it's unregulated, is becoming now the go-to for money laundering. It's also become a huge security concern because money to create unrest within the country or to try and create, foment terror on our soil is all being used, routed through these platforms, the crypto platforms.
Yes, Anand, it's true. And just wanted to put it that whatever the forum says or whatever the people says, cryptocurrencies have always emerged as the most advanced method of terror financing. We have got proof, and the only thing is that when it is being transacted on the darknet like Tor or ZeroNet or Perfect Direct, it's almost become an untraceable for the security agencies. And if you will believe that Indian had parked nearly around 6.6 billion in the cryptocurrency until May this year. And if you do the dissection and if you do the analysis of these, 90-80% of the things had been immersed into the terror funding, and like even in the Afghanistan also, if you see, now they have come with the concept of crypto Taliban. So most recently what we want to say is that Bitcoin always poses a money laundering. Tell me in which country it has been used as a fair economy. So because IP is not known, I mean, we are not against a virtual currency or a cryptocurrency, but only thing is that our system is not so robust, or we are not in position to monitor each and every transaction. So that's the reason as of now it should not be implicated, because once it is done, already we are on the short edge and we don't have so much things to monitor here. So then basically, like when we talk about the terror funding, Al-Qaeda is there, then we are talking about the terrorist organization, lone wolf attackers, they're all working. You can buy, you can sell, only you need an IP. It's just like an advanced version of Hawala, which was happening earlier also. You can do the transaction, and eventually when the transaction is complete, you can go and take the money. So no need of going here and there. As I said, it's basically, we are walking in a very dicey situation if you go for permission of, we go and permit this cryptocurrency as of now in India. Then China has banned all the other organizations which are basically concerned about the national security. They are totally destroyed. They don't want to go into this cryptocurrency or virtual currency.
Right. Satwik, how would you defend that, or how would you counter that? Because one of the arguments is that there is no base. There is no limit. What is something like a Unocoin or a Bitcoin or any Ethereum or anything else, a cryptocurrency going to be pegged at? Who is deciding its value? And the fluctuations can, lead to huge amounts of misery for people who would perhaps get into it and then suffer the losses.
Yeah, see, when it comes to the valuation of crypto, it is purely based upon the demand and supply. And generally this happens on the international exchanges. We have some exchanges in India as well. So, but comparatively, we have lesser liquidity here. So due to which the price kind of follows whatever is happening in the international exchanges, right? So once if there is more buying pressure, then the price goes up. If there is selling pressure, the price comes down. And it is very true when it comes to a lot of cryptocurrencies. Today we have about tens of thousands of different cryptocurrencies that exist, and a lot of them are coming up with their own roadmaps and pumps and dumps, and I mean everything that can happen to something like penny stocks or such things is kind of happening there. And at least even penny stocks have some kind of regulation, but definitely not for cryptocurrencies in most part of the world. So this kind of is definitely a challenge, not only for someone who is trying to enforce it, but also for the regulators. They don't know how exactly to completely regulate it yet. And on the other side, we also need to understand that we actually don't know the problems that could happen. And if the problems itself is unknown, I don't know how you can eventually come up with regulation. Today, we just, with kind of blanket statements is that, okay, this is related to money laundering and terrorist financing, etc. And that is possible with every kind of information technology, every kind of media, every kind of medium. So, I mean, that cannot be, the basis for coming up saying that, okay,
what?
This is
Do
good
we
or
let
bad.
it be? Do we let it be? Why are nations banning cryptocurrency then? Shouldn't there be some amount of regulation, some checks and balances? Because it can't be allowed to be a free for all. Because eventually what's being traded is hard money, money that's already pegged with the reserve. There is a
That's
conversion
definitely
which
true.
is happening. No, that's the counter argument that you are not trading only cryptocurrency with a cryptocurrency. You are actually converting physical money into digital money and into a platform which has got no regulation.
I mean, today, see, the technology comes first, the need comes next, and finally comes the regulation, right? So if the technology is not there, then people don't even identify that particular need. And when more and more people will eventually get involved to such an extent that it kind of gets deep-rooted in the country itself, then the regulation will become like mandatory. I mean, see, for example, take the example of Ola, Uber, or any kind of food delivery startups, anything is, I mean, initially, there was obviously no regulation. Then there was a need by the people. And then comes the regulation, and for some of them, they still don't have it. And here, the bigger issue that we see why we always talk about regulation when it comes to the cryptos only, but not for most of the other startups, is because crypto is pure money. And there is a lot of common men who eventually is getting involved, sometimes without knowing the risks. And protection of the common man obviously is one of the major goals for a regulator. And
Correct.
here only the education
so my
is
point
what
is that
eventually
there is no reserve. It's not pegged against anything. But I need to I need to use dollars, or I need to use hard Indian rupees, which are already pegged against a certain reserve, or to try and acquire it. And there comes an issue in terms of 40 lakhs or 50 lakhs was the cost of one Bitcoin. So if I'm giving somebody 50 lakhs and I get just one Bitcoin, which is a digital money, and I encash this somewhere in Switzerland or with my account and I convert it, am I not facilitating money laundering? That's a question which is being asked. The crypto debate continues, but we've run out of time. So Satvik Vishwanath and Dr. Nishakant Ojha, with the promise of taking this discussion forward very, very soon. I thank you all for joining us in this edition of The Nation at 5. We're going to take a very, very short break. Stay with us.